A federal judge has handed Meta a massive antitrust victory over Instagram and WhatsApp. But did the courts just greenlight a new wave of tech consolidation that kills competition? Self driving taxis are spreading from San Francisco to a growing list of red state cities. Are they making roads safer or just shifting power from Uber drivers to big tech? Six Democratic veterans of the military and intelligence world are publicly telling troops to refuse illegal orders. What does that say about Trump's second term agenda and the health of our democracy? Congress has voted almost unanimously, shy by one vote, to force the release of the Epstein files. Why did Trump fight it for months, and what happens if the Justice Department still drags its feet? And as Trump rolls out the red carpet for Saudi Crown Prince MBS, we visit the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi and what it means when an American president shrugs and says things happen. All that and more today on Filtered. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. We are live. It is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Thanks so much for joining me. It's great to be here with you. As always, we dive into the top 5 stories of the day and then analyze them, filter them through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. If you get any value out of this show, please like the show on whatever format you're on. If you're on a podcast platform listening, please subscribe or follow and leave a review. Let's start off as we always do, checking on the market vitals from yesterday. S&P 500 closed at 6,617.37. That's down 0.82%. The NASDAQ Composite closed at 22,432.85. That's down 1.21%. Always keep in mind the long term. Over the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 8.32% every year. The NASDAQ 100 has gone up on average 9.09% a year. So please keep in mind the long term. Okay, let's dive right into the big tech story of the day and really see if we can figure out what's going on here. Meta beats the government on Instagram on WhatsApp, its acquisition of those. Meta has won a landmark antitrust case over its purchases of Instagram and WhatsApp. Judge James Boasberg ruled that Meta did not break the law when it bought those two fast-growing rivals. The Federal Trade Commission said Meta used a buy or bury strategy to cement a monopoly. The judge said regulators failed to prove that narrow markets exist and pointed to TikTok and YouTube as powerful competitors. Meta says the ruling shows it faces fierce competition. The FTC says it is disappointed but faces long odds on appeal. The decision clears the way for Meta and other tech giants to pursue more acquisitions, including aggressive expansion into artificial intelligence. So, what's the real message here? Meta, you can now do whatever you want. You don't have to tiptoe around acquiring 49% of a company. You can just swallow it up whole. It's great for Meta. It's not good for startups, for investors, and for the public. Now, let me dig a little bit deeper here and give you sort of the other side, the other perspective from what the judge is saying. Many antitrust scholars say this ruling is a disaster for competition. Instagram and WhatsApp could have gone public, built their own businesses, and forced Facebook to innovate instead of simply copy. Instead, one giant gatekeeper controls the market. Critics warn this decision will encourage big tech companies to resume gobbling up smaller rivals, depriving the public of innovation, choice, and new companies. So, put me firmly in. Am I someone who uses Facebook? So am I a hypocrite? If you want to say that, sure, I use Facebook. I use all these social media platforms. Doesn't mean that you and I can't spot real problems with them. So here's the problem. Facebook can basically charge whatever it wants. It can give you all sorts of spam. It can inflate numbers. It can put your ad next to Nazi content. You're kind of powerless. And wow, if you ever have a complaint or a problem with something, good luck finding someone in customer service. You're going to need that luck. The problem, it's true that Facebook doesn't have a monopoly on all social media, okay? But that's not the only reason you break up huge companies. The United States didn't wait till one bank owned every single banking customer before they broke up some of the big banks. And the world is simply different from the time when Standard Oil could essentially control all oil. What we do see is a stifling of competition. So, and it's happening with Amazon, it's happening with Google. So it's not that Facebook is the only culprit here, but they're certainly one of a handful where it is a real problem. So many entrepreneurs 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago would start a company, get angel investors, establish things, test what they're doing, go out and raise venture capital, grow, hire a team, grow, and eventually go public. That's really not happening much anymore. The number of companies that can go from concept to going public has shrunk dramatically. In fact, the total number of publicly traded corporations in the United States today is about half of what it was 20, 25 years ago. This means fewer people like you and me and others can really own a piece of these companies, especially before they've gone on to become big and wildly lucrative. It's all falling to a handful of major incumbents. This stifles competition. Anyone who's come up with any kind of new app or way of socially connecting with someone who has a good idea, has built a prototype in recent years, and then has gone to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, the first thing they hear is, okay, looks great. Facebook is just going to buy you or copy you. So how do I make any money? It's a question I would ask if I were a venture capitalist. And the reality is the entrepreneur has no good answer for that because they're right. Now, the other slick thing that Facebook has done and all the big boys out there have done, and let's face it, they are boys, is they said, oh, we're not going to buy a company. That would be bad. That would be anti-competitive. Instead, we're just going to take a piece of the company. Now, the piece is usually 49%. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, so they can sort of say, well, we didn't acquire the company outright. And what they do is these are called acqui-hires. They're essentially taking the team that created that new product and saying, you're going to come work for us. And we're going to give you a salary, some equity, a nice payday, but your investors, we don't need them. And your employees, 90% of them, throw them in the garbage. That's what's happened again and again and again in Silicon Valley. And it is stifling competition. Now, the judge said there's been innovation, and therefore it didn't meet his criteria of being a monopoly along the lines of, yes, there is true competition from TikTok and some other social media platforms. But when you look at the big picture, it's not a pretty picture for entrepreneurs in the tech space today because these incumbents, these handful of incumbents, have such a stranglehold over the entire ecosystem of our internet. It's not good. I think we need a change. There needs to be reform. It's certainly not going to happen under this administration. The previous administration was serious about anti-tech, and because of that, they were vilified and demonized by people like Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, because those guys, life is good. I mean, if you're a multi-billionaire, or if you're someone like Elon Musk and halfway on your way to becoming a trillionaire, why would you want to change the status quo? Things are good just the way they are. Now, if you're already a billionaire, I understand completely that you don't want to change anything. Not sure I would. I would like to think I'd want to make the world better, but I'm not sure I would want to change the world if I were a billionaire. But for those of us who aren't billionaires, we want more competition. People love to talk about, oh, I believe in capitalism and free markets, not socialism. We hear that all the time from so many of these technologists. But when you dig a little deeper, no, that's not what they want. In fact, Peter Thiel, the renowned venture capitalist and tech entrepreneur, one of the first investors of Facebook, wrote a whole book about how he doesn't want competition. He wants companies that go from nothing, that go from 0 to 1, meaning they're the only one in the marketplace. And therefore, they can charge what they want. They can grow quickly. They can get the whole world on their platform and charge what they want. He's very upfront about that. And I get it. If you own a piece of Facebook, as Peter Thiel was smart enough to do as one of their first investors, it's great. It's not good for the economy. So I'm coming to you not from the standpoint of, wow, let's have a big government control everything. No, I don't want the government to take 10% of Facebook, the way a certain socialist recently took 10% of Intel for a government. I want free market capitalism. The whole point of a marketplace is competition. There have to be rules for competition. And one of the rules is you can't use the power you have to stifle competition. That's why, Google and Microsoft periodically get in big trouble for forcing every computer to take their search or their operating system. And they were told, no, you simply can't do that. It's too much use of your existing market position, and therefore it's ruining competition for others. So I come at this as a sane, sensible centrist, as I assume a lot of you do too. It's not a false dichotomy of big government versus capitalism. No, it's a choice between, do you want competition in a free market system, which is what it takes to be a free market system, or are you in favor of crony capitalism, kind of like Russia after the Soviet Union, where things are just divvied up, and this crony gets the copper industry, and this crony gets all the telecommunications. Do we want crony capitalism? Because guess what? That's only good for the cronies. It's not good for anyone else. I'll be monitoring this issue, and I hope you will as well. Lots more to come today on the show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filtered. Self-driving taxis, who gets them first? Self-driving taxis have gone from novelty to a real transportation shift. San Francisco has become what some call Waymo-pilled, with Google Robotaxis covering the city and Amazon's Zoox, now, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure how they pronounce it, now joining with free test rides. Waymo's safety data shows that human drivers suffer far more injury-causing crashes over the same distances. But a deeper trend is emerging. Waymo is rolling out fully driverless services across Texas and Florida, along with other Sunbelt and Purple State cities. Meanwhile, blue cities like Boston, New York, Seattle, and Washington have stalled deployment with unclear or restrictive laws. Red states may end up owning the early robotaxi economy, while major liberal cities sit on the sidelines. Okay, what's the real message here? Self driving cars are coming. They are coming everywhere, and they are reducing deaths and they are reducing cost. At least they have the potential to do that in the long run. And lawmakers who ignore that, trying to protect a group of drivers or a group of taxi owners, do so at the peril of their own voters. Let's dig a little deeper here. So, the Democrats have been on a roll recently in the last election, talking about affordability, when it would make things more affordable. Great message. It worked well in a lot of campaigns across Virginia, New Jersey, and famously in New York City. The issue, and they pointed out, I think quite rightly, that the Trump tariff tax, and no Democrat, in my view, should ever use the word tariff without saying tariff tax. The tariff tax is getting blamed by economists, but also real people. And they were quite right to point that out. But there is another issue when it comes to affordability, and it quite often deals with how you write the rules for innovation and development, whether it's how many operators you need on a train or a subway. Most places in the world, you have one train operator, conductor, or zero. Places like New York City, there's a rule you have to have two. Well, that makes it twice as expensive. And there are rules and regulations in a lot of the bigger cities, like New York City, that make it very difficult for someone like Waymo or any other car, whether it's Elon Musk, Google, any automated car, to get in and start testing. And the bottom line is people in New York are going to have to pay more for not only taxis, but Uber drivers too. And that is a part of why big cities cost more money. The so-called red states, and I'm in one now in Florida, they have these cars available now in Miami. They're coming to Orlando and other cities. They're coming everywhere. And here's where there's a real classic problem for centrists in the Democratic Party. On the one hand, you have a coalition quite often of organized union workers, or sometimes just organized groups of people who are not in a union, but are low income, which is how you would describe Uber drivers. You have a group of people saying, hey, we want a regulation to get rid of competition. And we vote for you, so be on our team. That's the message Democratic officials quite often have. So being politicians, and politicians in all parties do this, they give in to the request. And those people are very appreciative. They save their job. No one else notices for a while because maybe costs only go up a little bit, or maybe they stay the same, but they go down for everyone else around the country. So comparatively, your cost of living is harder. So that's the real dilemma Democratic officials deal with. San Francisco, a little bit different. Yes, a very Democratic town, but a town where big tech has a lot of influence. Let's look at some more of the facts here. Waymo operates about 2,500 autonomous vehicles. It's expanding service from San Francisco to San Jose, across Phoenix. I was in one in Phoenix last year, and it was a fantastic experience. And Los Angeles. These are going to be really popular in Los Angeles. Understanding AI, a business journal, reports Waymo is adding driverless services in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Miami, and Orlando, with a lot more cities coming. And if you notice a trend there, that's Texas, that's Florida. Those are states run by Republicans, considered Republican red states. Blue cities like Boston, Seattle, New York, and Washington lack clear robotaxi laws, or they are considering outright bans. I think this is very short-sighted. Look, I'm all in favor of not using human beings as guinea pigs and asking companies when they're doing something radical to demonstrate safety. And it is true that some people have already been injured, killed by some autonomous cars. I think just this past week, a cat was killed and people are going hysterical. So it's not 100% safe. But you know what isn't safe? Also, human beings driving cars. In fact, 1.2 million people a year around the world die from automobile crashes. So pretty much anything to get an actual human being out of driving a car is going to save lives. So this is where I have a real problem. I'm all in favor of regulation, creating a safety net, creating safety, safe water, safe air. I'm all in favor of government creating public schools, public infrastructure, using tax dollars. I'm not coming to you as some extreme right-wing libertarian ideologue. But I do think it's a huge, huge problem when some new technology comes out that clearly saves lives, which even if these autonomous vehicles don't get any better, and they do get better every day, they're already proven to be much safer than human drivers. If it saves lives and reduces costs for most consumers, I think you have to say yes. You have to pave the way. You have to make it easy. Otherwise, we might as well go back and ban the cotton gin. We might as well go back and say, let's ban automobiles, because that harms the stagecoach industry. What about those poor drivers of stagecoaches? What about those poor stable boys who are going to lose their job if we're not using horses everywhere? Again, it sounds absurd. You say, well, TJ, that's ridiculous. No one would do that. History may show the cities and states that made it difficult to get driverless cars onto the roads will be seen as similarly foolish. Now, it's one thing if you're talking about using technology to get rid of everyone making music and say, okay, no one's allowed to make music anymore. We're just going to do AI music. Okay, I'm not in favor of that. But when it comes to driving, how many people really, when they were little children, said, wow, the number one thing I want to do in life is drive somebody around from point A to point B? To take some drunk rich person from one restaurant to a nightclub at 3 a.m. and have them puke in the back seat of my car. How many people say, that's my vision of life? That's my purpose in life. I don't say this to knock driving. There's honor and dignity in all legal work where you're helping someone and making money. I don't say that to put down anyone for being a driver. But there were a lot of honest stagecoach drivers. There were honest, hardworking stable boys cleaning up horse poop everywhere before cars became so common. I don't think we bemoan the fact that they lost the chance of having a career in those fields. And anyone who currently makes a living driving taxis, Ubers, trucks, who does lose their job because of autonomous cars, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, I'm all in favor of using tax dollars to train you for some sort of profession or job where you are adding value. If there's a driverless car that can get me from point A to point B safer than a human being and less expensively than a human being, then it is essentially impossible for the human being to add value. All of us, if we want to make money, if we want to get a paycheck in some form or another, we have to add value. And periodically, technology changes that. My dad was old enough to remember that they had to have an ice box, and you had to get deliveries of ice, and you put it in the bottom third of your refrigerator to keep things cool, because there were no no freezers. There was no way to refrigerate a refrigerator. Maybe they called it something else, a cooler then. But what do you know? Technology made it easier to do so. And therefore, all the people, and they were mostly men, who lugged around big blocks of ice and brought it into your house with these big pincher things, they lost their job. So there's nothing new about this. What we have to decide as a society is, how do we lessen the pain of those who short term are going to lose? Because if you are a driver, if you're a taxi driver, you've already lost a lot. If you are an Uber driver, which is a significant, it's not a great job, it's not a high paying job, but for a lot of Americans, that's the only thing keeping them off the streets. That's the only thing helping them pay their rent. So people like that are going to need something to help that transition. I don't think we're within 2 or 3 or 4 years of a universal basic income, the way Elon Musk and Sam Altman have talked about. But there's got to be something to smooth the rough edges, because the approach of the liberal democratic cities to just say, no, you can't do it, there are real costs for that. That is one of the reasons why it is insanely expensive to live in New York City, is there's so many regulations for everything. That's why it's basically impossible to build new homes in a place like San Francisco. Sure, come on in. We'd love you to build new homes. By the way, here's 10,000 pages of regulations you're going to have to follow. And of course you can build a house, but follow these 10,000 regulations. And by the way, every 6 months, somebody's going to sue you. And 14 years later, you probably still won't have your house up, but go ahead. That's not going to work anymore. That is one reason why you see the Democratic Party held in such low esteem by many voters. And it's one reason, I would argue it's the main reason, why big cities in America and so-called blue and liberal states are so expensive. It is that mentality of, let's help and preserve this one small group at the expense of diffuse cost for everyone else. Their heart's in the right place. We do need to help these people, but it has to be done in a way that isn't as much of what a Luddite would do. And unfortunately, that I do think is a fair characterization of what goes on frequently. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question. Get feedback on your elevator pitch. Rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Democrats to the military refuse illegal orders. 6 Democratic lawmakers with military and intelligence backgrounds have released a video reminding America's troops that they can refuse illegal orders and that they must refuse them. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a Democrat, warns that threats to the Constitution are coming from inside the country. Senator Mark Kelly says the law is clear. You can refuse illegal orders. Representative Chris DeLuzio adds that you must refuse them. The message comes as some troops quietly express fear about the legality of Trump-ordered strikes on alleged narcotics traffickers at sea. The Trump administration responded by accusing Democrats of encouraging insurrection. Legal scholars say the real concern is that Congress has failed to fully examine the legality of these policies. Okay, so what's the real message here? Uh, Democrats are finally getting a little more spine and backbone. They realize that the Republicans who control Congress are never or rarely going to stand up to Trump other than Epstein for about 5 minutes. They're letting him wage illegal wars around the world, and they're sending a message. The Democrats are now sending a message to the troops. You don't have to follow illegal orders. This could be the beginning of a separation between this union between the military and Trump. It's worth paying attention to. All right, I'm going to show you this video because this is not normal in American politics. But it's also not normal for the United States to just start bombing boats in the Caribbean or any place else. So let me show you this right now. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Hakeem, to bring up the volume. I'm going to hit play. So again, this is a video made by Democratic members of the House and Senate. And I'm not hearing the video, so I apologize for that. I'll ask my colleague Hakeem to take a look at this a minute. Oh, I think I see the message. I think I see the problem there. Let's try it one more time. I see a mute button is on it. No, we're not able to mute it. But it's really a pretty simple ad where you've got not just Democrats, but Democrats who've actively served in the military. There's Mark Kelly, the former astronaut who's been to space. So these are people that any honest, fair-minded person would say you cannot question their commitment to the military. They've risked their lives. They've either served in the military or they have served in very senior intelligence capacities. So these are people who know what they're talking about. These are not people who just reflexively think, oh, the military's bad and let's just do cut spend. No, these are people who've devoted their lives to protecting America, to serving in the military, and they are rightfully concerned that
Senator
American soldiers are being ordered to commit illegal acts. And they're just reminding soldiers that you can say no. All right, I believe we have our audio problems fixed. I will go ahead and try to play the audio now.
Kelly, Representative Chris DeLuzio,
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander,
Representative Chrissy Houlihan,
Congressman Jason Crow,
I was a captain in the United States Navy,
former CIA officer,
former Navy,
former paratrooper and Army Ranger,
former intelligence officer,
former Air Force,
we want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
to protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad.
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard.
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
In the Army,
Our Navy,
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Wow, so that was pretty powerful. Okay, whether you agree with the sentiment or not, it is showing that we are increasingly a divided nation, and there is a real problem. Whether you are a liberal, a progressive, a Democrat, a centrist, a right of center conservative, a libertarian, there are many, many people across the political spectrum who are saying something's odd going on in Washington. Our founders did not intend to have a king. In fact, the whole reason our country was started was to get away from the notion of kings. They gave the power of declaring war to the Congress. They gave the power of ratifying treaties to the Congress, to the Senate. And we are seeing day after day with this Congress, led by Republicans in both houses, is that they're saying to the executive, we don't want any more power. Just do whatever you want, and we will give you a rubber stamp yes. The Democrats have no real power in the House or the Senate right now, other than the occasional use of the filibuster. This is one way they can fight back. They're trying to bypass the chain of command, essentially, and remind actual citizens who are in the military, whether you're a major or a general or a private, they're reminding them, you do not have to follow an illegal order. If someone says, bomb this person, even though there's no evidence, or kill this person, even though there's no evidence that they are committing a crime or on U.S. soil or a combatant in a war, you actually have the right to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And maybe in the short term, there's pain. Maybe you're disciplined, maybe you're court-martialed. But at some point, implicit in this message from the Democrats is, one day we will get back to norms. One day we will be a society judged and ruled by a constitution. And when that day happens, you're going to look pretty good if you said no to unconstitutional orders. And the corresponding is true as well. If you just blindly follow what dear leader tells you and commit atrocities and harm people, kill them, murder them, you're not going to get a pass necessarily just because you say, oh, I was following orders. You know, other people have tried that in the past. Certainly that was done a lot in the previous century. They didn't end up looking too good. And so I think it's very important that these Democrats did this. By the way, it's a pretty nice video. Lots of quick edits, music, lots of different faces, all of them with unimpeachable military and intelligence credentials. So it wasn't a whole bunch of people who were just known as anti-war activists, big liberals, radical left who are always anti-military. These were all people who believe in the military, served in the military or the intelligence establishment. So they can't be written off or dismissed very easily. But some do. Stephen Miller in the White House said it's an attempt to spark insurrection. Well, insurrection is something Stephen Miller knows a lot about. And last time I checked, it's hard to tell. Did he mean that as an insult or as a compliment? Back in a moment. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, confidently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. Well, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours since I came to you live before. Congress forces Epstein files into the light. Congress has passed a near unanimous order. There was that one guy in Louisiana who said, nope, I still want to keep files buttoned up. But everybody else, every other Republican and Democrat, voted to release the Epstein investigation files. The House voted 427-1 to force the Justice Department to make the documents public. Democratic lawmakers turned to applaud Epstein survivors seated in the gallery. Speaker Mike Johnson said he opposed the bill all along, but backed it to avoid political backlash, and because Trump told him to. In the Senate, Chuck Schumer secured unanimous consent to move the measure to President Trump's desk. Trump fought the bill for months. Oh boy, did he fight it. But reversed himself once it became clear he would lose. He now says he will sign it. Okay, things are moving quickly. As we talked about yesterday, the whole political landscape, the earth itself seems to be cracking and being reconformed in a completely new way in Washington, D.C. and the United States. What seemed unthinkable as recently as about 72 hours ago, it has now been done. I mean, let's not forget, it was only Saturday where Trump was saying, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a traitor for wanting this Epstein vote and for saying she would vote to release it. I'm going to have a primary opponent against her. She's persona non grata. To Sunday night saying, putting his finger in the wind, saying, oh gosh, I'm going to lose this vote. I don't want to look like a winner. That's my biggest fear in life. So I'm now going to say, I'm in favor of releasing the Epstein file. We're probably about 48 hours away from Trump saying, I was always in favor of releasing the Epstein files. It's fake news to anyone who suggests I didn't. He's not there yet, but let's give him 48 hours. So it wasn't long ago where it didn't look like this would even happen. Now, a lot has happened to keep this vote from happening. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, basically sent Congress home for more than a month just so they wouldn't have to vote on this. Then he delayed swearing in a new member who happened to be a Democrat, who happened to provide that one vote needed to force this issue. He did everything he could but lock her in a closet in the basement of the Capitol. But finally, he had to swear her in. The pressure was just too much. So where is this thing going? So many people, and I was guilty of this, frankly, saying, okay, this isn't really going to hurt Trump. His supporters have forgiven him so many of atrocities. The whole Access Hollywood, grabbed them by the you-know-what. The allegations of sexual assault and convictions against E. Jean Carroll, the numerous felonies. I mean, people seem to forget. I forget sometimes. We have a convicted felon in the White House. None of it seemed to dent his approval ratings. This issue is different because Trump rightly understood this issue resonated with his viewers, with his voters. Freudian slip, but not really. Trump does view this whole thing as a reality TV show. So when I say viewers, maybe that was the more accurate way of summarizing how he views people. He did say, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's tell all about Epstein. He was saying that on the campaign trail, not so much once he entered the White House and took firm control, and I mean firm control of the Department of Justice. So is he going to sign it and then tell his Department of Justice, well, the people have spoken, let's release every document? Well, if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. I've got a meme coin to sell you, okay? If you truly believe that. Now, let's not lose hope here. If you believe in transparency, if you want to actually know what happened to this 1,000+ girls, there is very much reason for hope. Because yes, of course, Trump could instruct his Department of Justice to simply delete every email, every memo, every note that has his name on it. Instead of us getting, 10 billion emails and papers, we get 9 billion papers and emails and say, hey, there, see, it's all done. That's everything. He could do that. But the good news is virtually every document the Department of Justice has, there is a copy of that in some lawyer's office. There's a copy of that at the Epstein Foundation. Believe it or not, there is one. So if they try to say, well, that's everything, I believe you are going to have just an onslaught of documents coming out from victims' attorneys saying, oh, you forgot one. Here's this one. Here's another one. Here's another one. And this is going to drip, 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 and then become a floodgate. So this may be one situation where Trump's hands are tied. What will his supporters do? We've seen that with someone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, staunch supporters of the president. They supported him through thick and thin. They give him every single vote he ever wanted. But this was just one they couldn't stomach. And what they both said is for the last month or so, when they have been back home talking to their constituents, every one of their constituents said, release these Epstein files. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene in her congressional district in South Georgia, not a single person said, oh, I'm not going to support you any longer if you vote to release these Epstein files. Not a single one, according to her. And I don't know, she has no political incentive, or certainly didn't at the time when she was excommunicated by Trump just a few days ago. She had no incentive, political incentive, to alienate one of her strongest backers and the most powerful person in her party. So I do get the sense that she is being genuine here and she's being very sincere. So how does this all play out? Yes, there can be delays. Yes, the Department of Justice says, okay, we've seen this and we're now gathering everything and we'll be releasing it in 2 weeks. They can get away with that without it creating a huge clamor and controversy. I don't think they're going to do that. I think that they're going to say, well, we still have ongoing investigations because Trump told us to investigate any well-known Democrat to see if they ever once shook hands at Jeffrey Epstein at a party for 5 minutes at a cocktail event. So we still have to investigate. So they're going to probably try that route and say, well, they can't release all this stuff because there's an active investigation. They can also say, well, we can't release anything about private sector individuals, which would have included Trump during almost every exchange he ever had with Epstein, because they happened back in the 90s and the 2000s when they were, quote, according to Epstein, best friends. So there's all sorts of ways they can still hide and dodge. But here's the problem. Every single day, this administration attempts to stonewall and hide information about these Epstein files. It makes more and more people say, what are they hiding here? Now, let me be very clear. I think it's irresponsible for judges and juries to make assumptions and jump to conclusions and think or to go off hunches. And so I think this person's guilty of murder or stealing or pedophilia. It's wrong for judges and juries to do that. But you, my friends, and I, we're not the judge and jury here. We are citizens, and citizens have to make judgments based on available information and look at it through the filter of everything else they have ever learned or experienced in their entire life. And I'm not the only one who looks at this situation and says, wow, I've never seen Trump act guiltier about anything in his entire life than this Epstein stuff. I'm not the only one to say that. People are coming to that conclusion, whether they are a sane, sensible centrist like I am, whether they are a Democrat, whether they are Republicans, whether they are right of center, whether they're libertarians. There's just this groundswell of actual people who are forming their own conclusions. And when they see someone constantly acting guilty, looking guilty, acting ashamed, they think, maybe there's something there. When they see someone changing their story every single day, a million different ways, where what they said one day does not in any way comport to what they said earlier, it reminds them of a little boy caught stealing the cookies from a cookie jar who broke the cookie jar, and when confronted, is standing over the broken shards of the cookie jar with crumbs dribbling down his face, saying, I don't like cookies. I didn't steal any cookies. I don't even know about a cookie jar. It's coming across about that credible. True, maybe you didn't literally see the 5-year-old boy steal the cookies. Maybe there's no videotape camera in your house showing the 5-year-old child taking the cookies, eating them, and breaking the cookie jar. But based on your experience in life and my experience in life, when you see a small child with cookie crumbs all over their face, looking guilty, looking ashamed, looking embarrassed, standing over the shards of a cookie jar, a logical, sane, normal person would come to the conclusion that kid stole the cookies and broke the cookie jar. And we are now in an environment where I think pretty much everybody who's an honest person, who isn't just a political hack, who says, I don't care if Trump even murders someone on Fifth Avenue. I'm going to say it's fake news, and I'm going to say he's great, and I'm going to say anything negative. Anyone who ever says anything negative about Trump is a far left lunatic. There are people like that, but I don't think that's most of America. I don't think that's most Trump voters. I do think there are certain core principles that go beyond partisanship, that go beyond your fealty to any one leader, even if he does have a cult-like following. And to many Republicans, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them, and I think Lauren Boebert is another, who says some things transcend politics. Things like if wealthy, powerful men get together and traffic children for sexual purposes, that's more important than whether my guy is going to appoint the Supreme Court justices I like, so I'll ignore it. They're not going to ignore it. Every single day that these files, and I mean all of the files, don't come out, I think more and more people are simply going to assume, again, I'm not stating this as a fact. I'm not making an allegation. I'm thinking a sane, normal person who has experienced the world where sometimes people lie and sometimes people do bad things and sometimes people are ashamed of things. I think we're moving closer and closer to a world where the average person, regardless of political party, regardless of political ideology, is going to assume the following. Again, I'm not making the allegation. I have no proof for this. I believe they are going to assume that Trump is mentioned repeatedly in these Epstein files, that there are numerous emails, records, letters showing that he was probably at parties, best case scenario, he's probably at parties and he saw Epstein having sexual relations of some sort or committing forms of abuse with 14-year-old girls. And Trump knew there were 14-year-old girls, and he laughed at it. I have to believe, again, I'm not making any allegations, have no proof, can't sue me. I have to assume that most people are going to start assuming that's probably the best case scenario for Trump. The worst case scenario is that he and Epstein, just the two of them, and they were known, it's been documented that they partied together just as the guys. There's a well-documented party at Mar-a-Lago where the only other guest was Jeffrey Epstein and an entire modeling agency of young girls. So we already know sometimes those guys like to party together around young girls. Based on Trump's actions and his mannerisms and how he has behaved so ashamed about this situation, I think a more likely scenario is there are documents showing that Trump had, I don't know if the correct word is sexual relations or assaulted an underage girl. Now, granted, she might have been 6 feet tall, knocked out, looked like she was 28 years old. But it turned out she was 17 years old, which is against the law in the state of Florida and on so-called Epstein Island, against the law for an adult man to have any kind of sexual content with a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old. I just think that that is the most obvious reason as to why he's doing everything possible to hide this. And maybe he didn't know, but found out later. It's certainly plausible that he had some sexual encounter with someone who appeared to be a grown-up woman. And after the fact, he said, oh, when do you graduate from college? And she said, oh, I'm about to go in my junior year of high school. And then he looks up and he sees a video camera. And so maybe he's thinking, uh-oh, I don't know for certain, but it seems like Jeffrey might have the goods on me. Again, I'm not making this allegation. I'm not spreading a conspiracy theory. I am sharing with you what I think an average human being who is open-minded, nonpartisan, is concluding now based on Trump's actions to try to keep this hidden. If you have another theory, let me know. All right, let's go to some of the comments. I appreciate those of you joining us. Dershowitz has the files. He says Trump isn't in them, claims Epstein said he had nothing on Trump. You're right. I have read that. But there are plenty of other people, including Jeffrey Epstein's own brother, who says, Epstein did have the goods on him. And we got to be careful here. There's going to be lots of different files. It may be that Dershowitz saw 1 million files, but he didn't see the ones incriminating Trump. So it's absolutely fair to bring that up. And I am fair. And I should point out, there's all sorts of mystery here because Democrats initially glommed on to this email last week where Jeffrey Epstein said that Trump was alone for 2 hours with a victim, and it turned out to be Virginia Giuffre. And she said categorically that Trump never approached her or did anything improper. So again, there's a lot of different perspectives back and forth. Nothing is 100% yet incriminating Trump in an actual crime. There's a lot of things to make him look like the ultimate sleazebag that have already come out, and apparently people don't care about that. But if there's evidence of actual criminal activity, I think that could change the whole political equation of what's happening in Washington, D.C. Daniel says, all materials released looks like Trump is in the clear. Well, Daniel, you're just giving partisan spin here. I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not giving liberal spin, Democratic spin, Republican spin, libertarian spin. And you, my friend, are just giving spin. It's not, there's absolutely nothing that puts him in the clear. I mean, look no further than the birthday wish he gave him of, you and I have a special secret about what keeps us young, don't we? To me, again, no proof. That sure sounds like their secret is we get to have sex with a lot of really good-looking young women, girls. That sounds what it's like. You may have a different interpretation, but I don't think it's because they both were really into 5 a.m. yoga. You may believe that. Randy says they were not best friends. Please be honest. So, Randy, I am going to be honest with you. No one can really, truly say who is the best friend of another. That's getting into someone's brain, their heart. So I'm not making that allegation. What I have reported to you is that it has been documented that Jeffrey Epstein told people they were best friends. It has been documented numerous times that they spent a tremendous amount of time socializing. If you want to quibble of, oh, well, Donald's best friend was actually this one other person and Epstein was his second best friend, okay. There's simply no honest person who can deny that for about 10 or 15 years, they were close friends. They did a lot together. And the clip I'm sure you've seen a great deal of is the two of them at a party. I think it was in the late 90s. And it's the only time I've ever seen Trump look really happy. He's sort of doing this dancing on the sidelines, and he's with Jeffrey, and he's smiling, and he's pointing like, well, check out this chick over here. They clearly appeared to be buddy-buddy. And again, it has been documented that there was a party at Mar-a-Lago where an entire modeling agency was there essentially to work, and there was one guest. That one guest was Jeffrey Epstein. Now, whether that was his best friend, I don't know, but clearly they were friends. Clearly they spent a lot of time together. And clearly, at least one of them thought they were best friends. Now, so you can't deny that. So don't try to spin that away, please. Okay, at Mom says, I've had this very same analogy going through my head over Epstein and Trump. Okay, I'm not the only one. And again, I'm not here to spread conspiracy theories, but when a well-known public official does so many bizarre things that contradict all known behavior of what a normal, innocent person would do, I think it's fair, not for judges and juries to try to connect the dots and hypothesize, but I think it's fair for the rest of us. At Mom says, I wonder if Fox is telling their viewers any of this. Well, I can tell you when the news came out last week, I did a quick check, and I do look at Fox sometimes. And full disclosure, I have appeared on Fox News Channel more than 100 times over the years. So again, I'm a sane, sensible centrist. I've appeared on MSNBC, Fox, Bloomberg, CNN, Al Jazeera, you name it. I've been a news analyst on all of those places. But their spin last week, anyway, was Democrats committing crimes by illegally leaking intelligence information about Jeffrey Epstein. That was kind of their spin on things. USL says Katie Johnson's testimony has been consistent every time, and she has corroborating witnesses. So it is interesting that so many of Epstein's victims are now coming out. They're holding press conferences. They're saying we're tired of living in the shadows and we want justice. Speaking of justice, that does take us to a completely different issue now that we've got to switch over to in issue 5. I say it's different. In some ways, it's a little bit similar. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back. Trump's Saudi embrace and the Khashoggi murder. President Trump welcomed Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the White House with military bands, jet flyovers, talk of F-35 sales, nuclear cooperation, and promises of a huge investment. When asked about U.S. intelligence findings that the Crown Prince ordered the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, Trump snapped at reporters and said, things happen. Okay, here's the reality. Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2nd, 2018, to pick up paperwork so he could marry his fiancée. He never walked out. Turkish intelligence obtained audio of his confrontation with a Saudi hit team. and the sounds of his killing. Specifically, he was hacked to death in a saw with a saw. He was murdered and cut up in little pieces. His remains have never been recovered. A declassified U.S. intelligence report concluded that the Crown Prince approved the operation. That's right, he signed off on the hit. Analysts pointed to his tight control over Saudi security services and the involvement of his closest aides. So, what's the real message here? We have a United States president honoring a murderer. We have a United States president who is saying, forget what my own United States intelligence operations are telling me. I'm just going to say stuff happens. It's okay to murder journalists as long as you give us oil and help me build new gold-plated hotels in your country. That's the price. You want to murder people? You can get away with it. Just give me some more gold. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So this is troubling to not just international rights groups, as you can imagine. They're apoplectic over this, but to our own military, to our own intel. What's the point of having an intelligence service if they tell you, okay, we have evidence that this person murders people, and you then say, well, that's okay. Let me put on my finest tuxedo. Let me invite all my buddies like Elon Musk and Ronaldo and other fancy, wealthy, famous people to the White House, and let me toast and just have a big, big party for this murderer because, hey, he wants to do business with me. He wants to occasionally agree with me on foreign policy issues, and he'll help me get richer and let me build hotels in his country. That's what's happened here. And if you think this is normal, well, it may become the new norm, but it's never happened before in the history of the United States. Am I saying the United States has never greeted a foreign leader who had some questionable baggage? No, I'm not saying that. Are there perfect leaders out there? No. But there should be some lines. And until recently, one of the lines was, you can't take a hacksaw and chop up a journalist you don't like because they wrote things you don't like and kill them and get away with it. And yet now you can. It seems like you can murder journalists and the White House throws a gigantic, fancy, formal ball in your honor. That, my friends, is a sad state of affairs. Okay, that concludes our core program for the day. Every day, we typically look at the top 5 issues of the day that relate to business, technology, and culture. And that's why we started off today talking about Meta and what's going on there and driverless cars. I really, frankly, would love not to have to talk about this Epstein stuff, but it is so dominating our culture, not just in the US, but around the world. It's hard to avoid. But I just want to remind you, this is a business show. I have a business background. I have trained business leaders and billionaire fund managers and Wall Street managers and CEOs of publicly traded companies, as well as presidents of countries and other countries, prime ministers, Nobel Peace Prize winners, Miss Universes on how to communicate effectively and how to have good personal development habits, all with the idea of helping you. So we look at the top stories of the day and learn more about the world, but together we also learn about how to improve our own communication skills and personal development skills so that you can be more successful in your personal life as well as your professional life. So let's switch now to our grab bag section of the show. That's where we look at stories that didn't quite make the cut, but I still think are worthy of comment. Bill Maher, the comedian, says he quit touring because he fears he could be shot in today's political climate. He told another comedian, Patton Oswalt, that traveling the country no longer feels safe and that he prefers the control of his weekly show and podcast. Okay, this is troubling at some level. And full disclosure, I don't agree with Bill Maher on everything, but I do like him. have followed his career ever since he started off politically incorrect on Comedy Central, way, way back. That was before Real Time on HBO, before Politically Correct on ABC. It started off on a little cable show. One of my regrets is I was booked to be on his show a couple of times and I didn't make the final cut each time. So I've never actually been on his show, but I have seen him in person. I do remember it was a bad time for me. My father had passed away, and it was the funeral had been that day. I'm with my family, my mother, others. We're just looking for something to take our mind off things. And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. What do you know? Bill Maher's performing at a comedy club right around the corner. And we went, and it cheered us all up, and he was great. I don't want to make too much out of it. I do think it's a problem for public figures to live in fear. I think it's a lot more of a problem for elected officials who fear that if they do the right thing, they will be taken care of. We've certainly heard people like Senator Murkowski of Alaska say that she's living in fear and all of her Republican colleagues are living in fear if they cross Trump. Mitt Romney was very candid that a number of his Republican colleagues in the Senate would have voted to convict Trump of impeachment, except for fear on their lives. And Romney was able to do it because he's so rich, he could afford around-the-clock bodyguard protections out of his own pocket. So we've had a lot of fear in this country for a while. I'm sorry Bill Maher feels like that, but I do want to put this in perspective. He's almost 70. He's going to be 70 in a few months. He has been traveling nonstop for a half a century. He's insanely wealthy, or at least according to reports, worth more than $100 million. So he doesn't need the money. And he's already able to speak and be seen by millions every week on not only his show, Real Time on HBO, his overtime show, which is the same guest, and that's on YouTube, and his podcast, Club Random. So I certainly don't wish ill or any attacks on Bill Maher or any comedian or anyone, but I'm not feeling too sorry for him because he's got a lot of good, sweet gigs. And I think even if HBO cancels him and fires him tomorrow, he's got his podcast, he'll do other shows, other networks would pick him up. I don't think we have to worry about Bill Maher being heard. Next grab bag issue. A federal judge has ordered 14 Texas school districts to remove 10 commandment posters, ruling that the state mandate violates students' religious freedom. Districts say they will comply. Okay. There's a lot of talk these days about creeping socialism. Socialism is taking over America. Socialism is bad. Guess what? I agree. I do think we have a problem with socialism. This is a clear-cut example of people in Texas wanting to socialize their religion. They want to use big government. They want to use taxpayer money to buy these 10 commandments, taxpayer money in the form of teacher time or workers at schools time to nail up these 10 commandments. And it's socialism. It is socializing one particular group's religious preferences. It also shows, frankly, how incredibly insecure they are. Apparently, they think their religion is so weak and lame, no one will believe it unless they have big government ramming it down their throats. If you really had some faith in your religion, or faith that you have the one true religion, then you wouldn't need to use government dollars and government buildings to do your proselytizing. Do that on Sunday morning or evenings or weekends or other time. You wouldn't need that extra push of the government socializing your religion. So keep in mind, yes, when conservatives tell us there's a big problem of creeping socialism in America, they're absolutely right. Unfortunately, they don't realize it. It's coming from the inside. They are trying to socialize religion. Okay. Next issue, we got to move over to California, Carmel, California, one of the most beautiful places ever Clint Eastwood was their mayor a long time back. Carmel is moving to permanently ban pickleball at its only public court after years of noise complaints. The city council says enforcement is impossible and the ban is the only realistic option. Well, I got news for you, not just those of you in Carmel, but in other cities around the world. You tennis players trying to fight the pickleball players, we're coming for you. Okay. Those of you listening on the podcast, I'm holding my pickleball paddle. I love pickleball, and I played tennis for half a century. So I had a big love affair with tennis. I love pickleball more. And in America right now, there is a growing war, especially in public parks, but also condo communities and other residential areas where the tennis players don't like the pickleball players, and vice versa. I think those should all be able to get along. But here's the big, there's two contentious issues. The tennis players and many in the community say pickleball is much louder. It is somewhat louder, I won't kid you. But compared to the noise most people hear from cars honking, their own kids yelling at them, the music they play in their house, it's not that loud. It should not be banned because of the noise. The other issue is the tennis players just feel territorial. It's like, we've had these 6 courts in our community since I was a kid. They're my right. And they forget the fact that nobody plays on them, or one court is used every other day. Meanwhile, people are lining up and having to wait an hour to play on the 2 pickleball courts. Every single tennis court in America could be turned into 4 pickleball courts. Now, am I saying there shouldn't be tennis courts in America? No. But there is a way of sharing. One, because the pickleball court is a subsection of the tennis court. It's true the tennis net is a little bit higher, but unless you're playing in a tournament, no one really cares. It's very easy to draw pickleball lines as a subset of the lines for a tennis court. And that way, first come, first serve. If you're there to play tennis, you play tennis. If you're there to play pickleball, the lines are already drawn. Now, a lot of tennis players will say, I don't like that. I don't want to have to look at those lines. It'll mess up my tennis game. I heard this criticism at one of my own local pickleball courts just last year. And a gentleman overheard that. He said, hey, did you ever go to high school? And the person complaining about the pickleball lines on the tennis court says, yeah, why? And the first gentleman said, that's because every single high school in America has lines for the basketball court and lines for the volleyball court. You survived it in high school, you can survive it on the pickleball court. So is the sound perfect? No. Is that occasionally a problem? Yes. But there's a much bigger problem in America and much of the world these days. It's called people sitting on the couch all day long, becoming overweight, wildly obese, diabetic, having strokes, and dying 5, 10, 15, 20 years prematurely. And this pickleball racket is getting them off the couch. It's getting them moving. I'm in favor of anything that gets people to be more active and exercise. And pickleball is just so much easier than tennis, but not easier in the sense that you're not getting a workout. I find for most people who are not world-class athletes or perfect 21-year-old college specimens, most people work up a much bigger sweat and have a bigger workout in pickleball than they do in tennis because the rallies go so much longer than they do in tennis. So, Carmel, I hope you can reconsider this ban and do an actual accounting. How many people want to play tennis every day versus how many people want to play pickleball? Because if it's anything like most cultures, pickleball is winning. Final issue of the day. Congratulations to Joe Rogan. He's back on top with the latest ratings on Spotify. He takes the first place position, beating out The Daily. Now, I think The Daily doesn't get enough attention because The Daily is put out by the New York Times, and it's sort of traditional journalism. It is produced in a style kind of like public radio. Lots of experts, lots of quotes, lots of great sound bites. Very a little opinionating and opinionizing from a host. It's sort of a straight news service. So we live in an era when so many people are bemoaning the fact that news is getting destroyed. I take some comfort in knowing the Daily is listened to by millions. I like it. I listened to it this morning. It's not quite in my regular rotation, but I think I'm going to add it. Maybe we can get the Daily back to number one. So do realize there is a place for real journalism. There is a place in the media world and in the podcasting world for people who deal in facts and information and not just demagoguery. I certainly view them as a role model. My show is a little bit different. I do provide more analysis, and my show is a more host-focused show. But I think, roughly we're swimming in the same waters. So I wish the Daily well. Hope they get back to number one, and I hope I can sort of crawl up that list as well. Okay, we're going to end the show as we do every day now, which is taking questions from you. And these questions deal with things outside of the news. Enough of the news already. Let's dig a little deeper into things that truly matter, of a permanent nature. So, as some of you have heard me talk about, I do have 300 online communication skills and personal development courses. So my students ask me questions. This one comes from Matteo. Matteo is a student in my course called Freelance Consulting, the 1-hour course for beginners. The question is, what are the key steps to start a freelance consulting career with minimal risk and maximum impact? Well, one of the beauties, Matteo, of a consulting career is these days you don't need an office. You don't need an assistant or a secretary like back in the day. You don't need a fancy car. What you need is a skill that other people value. That's the number one thing. So you got to figure out, first of all, what are all the things you do that other people value? Now, you may say, well, TJ, I do a lot of things. I cook a fantastic carrot cake. Okay, but unless you want to start a bakery or unless you want to start a catering business, you're probably not going to start a freelance consulting business making carrot cakes. I would urge you to think about and to actually write it down. Write down every single thing you are good at, better than the average person. Then write down everything people are willing to pay money for. Where is there a market for something? Then I want you to write down what are the things that you really enjoy doing. You might be good at shoveling manure from a barn. You might be faster than anyone, but if you absolutely hate it, you're not going to want to sell your services for that. So put together a detailed list of everything you're good at, a list of everything people value and are willing to pay money for, and a list of things you enjoy. Now look at the overlap. Where is there an overlap? You might enjoy watching and critiquing World Cup soccer football, but maybe no one's ever paid you a penny for your opinion on that. But let's say you're really good at creating websites for solo practitioners, and you can do it quickly, cheaply, in one day. That may be your sweet spot. You can still watch World Cup soccer with your friends, but devote your energies to designing that website. The biggest mistake most people have is they say, well, I've got all these things. I want to get more money, so I'll just tell people these 10 services I do. I made that mistake decades ago. You're far better off focusing on the one thing that you're best at and that people pay the most money for and that you're good at and enjoy. Figure out that and just do that. Now, especially if you're starting out and you need money, things are tight, you will make money much faster that way if you have a pinpoint precision on one thing. You should be able to summarize what you do in one sentence. So when I first started my business, I said, oh, I do public speaking training, and I do media training, and I do internet audio interviews with people. This was before podcasting. This was, more than a quarter of a century ago. I can make video interviews with you and make infomercials for TV. This was before YouTube. I can help you raise money. I went on and on. I had a dozen things on my website that I could do. And truth be told, I was pretty good at all of those things. And I had skills other people didn't. The problem was you can't market a dozen services. You can't even market 3 services. It's hard to get people's attention. Then it's even harder now. So you got to focus on just one thing you do. So rather than being a handyman, maybe specialize. You only do wallpaper. Maybe specialize more. You only do super high-end wallpaper in houses worth more than $1 million. Figure out what you can do. The sooner you can specialize, the easier it is for you to reach that market. The second thing you've got to do is spend every second of your day marketing. That can be newsletters. It can be creating your own YouTube show. It can be creating a podcast. It can be going to local entrepreneurial events or local events for people in your industry. It can be calling friends, colleagues, associates. It can be even cold calling. Not my favorite thing, but it's sure a lot better than sitting back and spending more time fiddling around with your logo and talking to lawyers about what the best legal structure is for your business. Because I hate to tell you, you don't have a business until you have paying customers. So you should devote 100% of your attention to figuring out, how do you make your first sale? And then how do you get testimonials from that person saying, you're the best ever, you're the greatest ever, you're the greatest value, and mean it. They really mean it. And use those testimonials to get in front of more and more prospects. That is the fastest way to start a consulting business. I wish you well. Please let me know what you end up doing. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a fun show as always. So much going on in the news. I appreciate your perspectives. Please leave your comments. Where you agree with me, let me know. Where you disagree, let me know. Fact check me. I don't get everything right. I'm not perfect. All I can do is tell you I do my best to give you the honest, straight information. I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist, trying to make sense of the world. I hope together we've got a better sense of what is truly important and how we can navigate through the world together. Thanks. See you tomorrow.